Morning and welcome. I am your host, Denise Griffitts, and in this episode of the Closers Inner Circle podcast, my co-host, the legendary sales trainer Bengay III, reflects on the timeless lessons that he learned from his greatest mentors, and that's wisdom that continues to guide his work and life to this day. From mastering the art of influence to understanding the psychology of human connection, excuse me, Ben shares the strategies, stories, and turning points that shaped him into one of the most respected voices in sales. And don't be surprised if one of the lessons that he talks about today is the opposite of what most people, salespeople, in fact, are taught. Insights that can change the way you sell, lead, and succeed. Last week, we covered boring wins, and we weren't joking because boring does win. And we're talking about the simple routines that look ordinary but produce extraordinary results. So be sure to go back and listen to that one. We really did reveal how consistency builds trust, mastery, and lasting success. And by the Closers Books part one and two, try not to cough on you, on eBay, having these books in front of you while you listen to the Closers Inner Circle podcast lets you follow along, take notes directly in the margins, which I would never do, and apply the strategies as we discuss them. They're not just great reading, they're your playbook for closing more sales and building lasting success. And they arrive with free shipping and they're signed by Ben. So go to eBay, look for Ronzoni Books on eBay, Ronzone Books. And finally, and I'm going to get to Ben in just a moment, I promise. Today's episode of the Closers Inner Circle podcast is sponsored by me, your partner in Success Radio. It's my own podcast. It's been ranked in the top 1.5% of the most popular podcasts globally. And it's the home where this show is published and where I've spent 17 and a half years sharing powerful conversations with leaders, entrepreneurs, and authors. In fact, that is where I met Ben all those many years ago. And I am eternally grateful for that connection. Okay, Ben, it's your turn. Good morning.
Good morning. You didn't leave much for me to say, but I'm happy to be here as usual. Honored to be your co-host once a week, and I think we're doing some good. I hear from people from all over the English-speaking world
That
that
includes China, by the way. Did you know that? We're big in China. Go figure.
Gigi is in the costume jewelry business, vintage costume jewelry. And a lot of it was originally made in China. And outside of the United States, China's our biggest customer.
I believe that.
Yeah, and other war zones. I mean,
Oh,
well, you get an order from, I'm having a senior moment, where Russia and
Ukraine.
Ukraine are fighting. We get a lot of orders, or she does, from Ukraine. I'm thinking, you have a war going on. You don't need costume jewelry. You
But
might
if it
need a
makes them
rosary.
smile, right? But remember, and I've read about this, I wasn't around, but during the World Wars, I think it was World War II, red lipstick. Every female in the world wanted red lipstick because it made her feel good.
Yeah, I can see why that would happen. Great story people frequently ask me for because they heard me tell it somebody else, somewhere else. We were at Holiday Magic Cosmetics for some reason. I wasn't deeply, although I was president of the company, I wasn't deeply immersed in how the products were made and so on. I just knew they were good because we had the right people. I'd frequently, people say, well, a lady will say to me, you were in the cosmetic business. Tell me about this and that. And I said, if you've had a tube of lipstick and a purse full of odds and ends for a few years, you know more about the cosmetic business than I do. I know about sales and marketing and what the product is, assuming it's a good product, competitively priced, et cetera, is almost immaterial. So anyway, we're out of cherry red lipstick. And people are asking about it frequently. So I added it to my list of things to talk to the owner of the company about, William Penpatrick, We had a years-long fight over I wanted gold caps on the products instead of black caps. And he was killed in a plane crash while we were still fighting about it. But when I started the next line of cosmetics that I was involved in, one that we owned, the first thing I told everybody involved is they're having gold caps. Get that through your head. I'm going to win this battle, even if it's in a different company and after he's dead. So anyway, we're flying across the country in the Learjet going somewhere, California, heading east. And we were chatting about things. And I said, let me tell you about something that's driving me crazy. I can't get the production people to do it. He said, what is it? I said, we're out of cherry red lipstick. He said, well, tell them to fix it. I said, I've done that, but I don't know how to make cherry red lipstick. And I went on and on and on about cherry red lipstick. And finally, he raised his armrest. He was sitting in one seat by the window. I was across the aisle by the window on the other side. He raised his armrest and he said, come here. And I'm looking like, where? He tied up the space, and he pats his lap. He said, sit down here. So I sat in his
Oh,
lap.
I
And
have not heard this story. Keep going.
he raises the window, the blind, and tells Art Stagg, circle this area, and I'll tell you where. So he said, come here. Now we got two heads stuck or trying to be stuck in a Learjet window, and we're circling. He said, do you see that light down there? And I said, yeah. He said, which one? Well, we were over Dallas or someplace. So he called my bluff. And so I'm looking down and playing the game, and next to the red one, you see the flashing green light? Okay, to the right of that, and so on. After about 10 minutes of circling in a not inexpensive plane to fly, we decided that we were looking at the same light. And Art had put his wingtip on it as best he understood it. And so Art was their corporate pilot. So now we're circling. And he says, do we agree we're looking at the same light? And I said, yeah. He said, okay, here's what I think that light is. That's a 3-bedroom home, husband, wife, 2 children. The light we're looking at is over their dining room table. Is that okay? And that's fine with me. I mean, that's a lot of knowledge for a light that I secretly wasn't even sure we were looking at the same one. And he said, you know what I think they're thinking? And I said, no. He said, I don't think they give a shit that we're out of cherry red lipstick. And I said, oh, okay. And sat back over my chair and made a mental note. Don't tell Bill Patrick we're out of cherry red lipstick or any other minor detail in business ever again. So I got cured rather quickly about majoring in minor things, which I later heard directly quoted from, I think, Jim Rohn or somebody. But I was doing it. I was majoring in minor things. And as best I recall, when we got back the day we landed, walked in the office and Bill Brogan, our purchasing agent, said, Ben, just got a big load of cherry red lipstick in. I said, now you tell me. You told me before I wouldn't have humiliated myself in Bill Patrick's lap.
I think in pictures, right? I think I've shared this with you before.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to get that one out of my head anytime soon. I'm going to have to bleach my eyeballs. That's just more information than I needed. You know what I wanted to ask you, Ben, though? Who was the first mentor that really left a mark on you? And I always want to say, oh, it was Dr. Napoleon Hill, but I don't think that's quite right.
It really isn't, although he was a tremendous influence on me. At the risk of sounding hokey like Ozzie and Harriet, my 2 greatest mentors were my mother and father, although I didn't know the term mentor. Dad was just one of those charismatic people that I aspired to be. As they say, every time somebody dies, when he walked into a room, the room lit up and so on. He was that type of person. And my mother sounded just like Katharine Hepburn, the New England accent, and sort of had that attitude. She had come from money. The family lost the money in the Depression, married dad. They made a lot of it back. And so she'd seen the up, when I think of my mother, I think of waste not, want not. Penny saved is a penny earned. Salad dressing bought. My dad was a food broker. We sold salad dressing. We had cases of it in the basement, but in the refrigerator, the bottles were all upside down so that they would, the last drop would drain out.
I do
Because,
that. My grandmother taught me that.
yeah, I do. I still do it, but
Hmm.
I do it because my mother went through the Depression in 1929, and that got passed down. So they set they put the ball on the tee, and then other people, me being the ball, came by and hit it. And in that group are lots of people. William Penpatrick, who I met pretty quick after joining the business, sales mentors, Bill Dempsey, the guy who recruited me, a guy who was probably one of the greatest salespersons who ever lived. You've never heard of him, but his name was Walter Wells. And Walter Wells was a harder version of Jimmy Rucker. By that, I mean, Jimmy is the greatest salesperson I ever personally worked with. But Walter Wells was a person, if he zeroed in on you, it would save you a lot of time and money. Just get out your checkbook or credit card or whatever and agree to it, because you were going to agree to it anyway, in an hour or 45 minutes or what have you. He just had a magical ability. Uh, Dr. Hill came along in my life in 1967. I joined Holiday Magic in 1960 Cosmetics. For those of you listening, it was the largest direct sales multi-level marketing company in the world at the time. I joined it Wednesday, September 15th, 1965 at noon in Atlanta, Georgia, with Jimmy Rucker and another guy who'd answered the same ad, Zig Ziglar. The
Mm-hmm.
three of us, the three of us sat there and listened to the presentation and joined $91.41, which I borrowed from Rucker because we were both getting paid that day by my father, and that was about after taxes what we made. Keep in mind, this is 1965. But I, through the ability to speak, which I had figured out rather early was crucial to that type of business, and the ability to sell, and I was working with Jimmy Rucker. He was my high school running buddy. I didn't realize how important he would be in my life. He was just my friend. By day, we called on prospects. By night, we prowled Atlanta looking for women while drinking beer and didn't understand why we weren't attractive. Well, belching and, hey, girly, girly. Uh, so he was a tremendous influence on me, Jimmy Rucker, although neither one of us knew it at the time. And then because I was operating at or near the top of that company, Zig Ziglar, we joined the same day, but that was a coincidence. We both answered the same want ad. Um, and the Walter Wells of the world and the Bill Dempseys all started coming into my life. And then we started drawing people who were already successful. By the time I was 25, I was president of the company. And to get on our stages, and we were the place to go if you had a motivational message or a sales training or uh, human potential development type message. You wanted to get on the Holiday Magic stages and our sister companies. We had other products with the same exact same marketing plan, but different names, different products. If you wanted on those stages, you had to come through me. And because I was president of the company, I didn't ask for that position. It was just came with the package. So that put me in the circles with, and they were seeking the approval of me, of Og Mandino, Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, uh, Dr. Robert Schuller, the Crystal Cathedral, the Hour of Power. And I think I gave you one time a list of people that I've worked with who are interesting. Almost every single one of them goes back to I was president of Holiday Magic. No matter how big or I was attitude coach for the astronauts, Apollo 15, 16, 17. Why? Because a young lady named Jeannie Harrington worked for us as a holiday girl.
Mm,
And her husband was the launch test supervisor of the manned space program. So through her, I met him, was invited down for the launch of Apollo 14. They had a big gathering. I thought it was so I could meet the astronauts. Turned out it was so they could meet me, young white millionaire, because they were all beginning to think about after we go to the moon or we're killed or something, we got to go on to the next phase of our lives. How do we maximize that and so on? So I was of some help to them. So every Charlie Manson
I
is
know. Every
is
time
on
you
that.
say his name, I just kind of go, "Bleh."
Well,
I do a whole body free song.
that goes back to the holiday magic thing. Had the courage and the name to call on San Quentin to sell them on my People Builders program, and which I taught there 12 hours a week, 6 o'clock Friday night to 6 o'clock Saturday morning. Taught at San Quentin for 5 years. And Charlie Manson sent word through a lieutenant I worked with that he wanted to meet me. And I said, well, he said, an inmate wants to meet you. I said, don't come down. I don't do house calls. He said, well, this one can't. But he's looking at you right now. We're standing next to the adjustment center, which is like junior college to death row. And he said he's looking at us right, and he pointed up to the window uh, where the guards walk on the gun rails. And he said, from where we're standing to his cell is a direct shot. You can wave at him if you want, but it's Charlie Manson. You'll have to go to him. So I wound up spending 9 hours in Charlie's cell, 3 different visits, and so on. But that goes back to I answered an ad in Atlanta, Georgia, September 15th, 1965. Remove Holiday Magic and all those other people I've mentioned, I wouldn't have been standing at San Quentin with that opportunity to grow as a person, to meet fascinating people. Charlie, by the way, was not the worst person I ever met at San Quentin. He was most famous, but there were other people there he didn't hold a candle to as to what they had done. So I got to meet an interesting group of people. That gets you in the newspaper. The newspaper runs stories about my program, and whether they liked it or not, they all did. And that introduced me to Sally Stanford, the famous San Francisco madam.
Madam, yeah. I know
We,
that name.
yeah, we became dear friends. She was just a broad, if there ever was one, and I mean that as a compliment. She was one thing led to another, and I learned. I'm a good listener. I learned from each one. A quick Sally Sanford story. We're sitting in the Valhalla, a restaurant she owned after she ceased being a madam. She, by the way, ran for mayor of Sausalito, California, and was defeated because she ran under her real name, which was Mary something. Sally Stanford was a stage name for her madamhood. And so she changed her name legally to Sally Stanford, ran the next time under that name, and won like 80% of the vote. Everybody would say, oh, that's Sally Stanford. Of course, we want her. Great businesswoman. Everybody who lived in Sausalito had been in the Valhalla at one time or other. So anyway, Sally and I are sitting, and Marcia, my first wife, we're sitting at the bar talking. She was holding court, and Marcia went up and went to the bathroom, got up. While she was gone, a lady came over and said, Ms. Stanford, my husband is one of your great admirers. Surely you know him, Dr. whatever his name was. And Sally, poker face, said, no, never met him, never heard of him. No, no, he says he's a good friend of yours. She said, I'm very sorry, I don't know him. And so the lady, defeated, walked away. And as she was leaving, I said to Sally, The husband knows you. He was bragging about knowing you. He's probably within sight of us right now. Why did you deny it? She said, if Marcia comes out of the bathroom, and she was approaching as she's saying this, and asks me if I know Ben Gay, the answer is no. Never heard of it. And so that's one, who's a mentor? That's a mentor right there. I learned a huge lesson about what you say and when you say it and who you know and who you don't know.
And when you
From
keep
the,
your mouth shut.
yeah, and keeping your mouth shut. But I just, she said, if Marcia comes out of that bathroom and asks if I know Ben Gay, answer is no. I said, I got it. I got it. Because all she had to do, that lady, say, oh, yes, I know Dr. So-and-so. Well, how do you know him? Did he
Yeah.
frequent did he frequent your place?
Does he
Which he
have a
did.
favorite room? I mean, what the heck? No, thank you. I know what color his boxers are.
The
These are not
United
conversations
Nations,
you wanna have.
the United Nations was to a degree formed at Sally's house of ill repute, or whatever you call it. I don't want to say whorehouse, that's in bad taste. At Sally's house of ill repute, because the powers that be that were attending the formation of the United Nations in San Francisco in 1948 frequented her place.
Of course
And
they did.
yeah, of course. And she said, uh, then I watched the United Nations come together. From time to time, I would offer a suggestion if I was passing through, and so on. So that puts me one hand shake away from Dag Hammarskjöld and all the people of that era. So I've just been really good about, if there's you and I walk into a room and there's an interesting person in there that I haven't met, I'll have met them within 2 or 3, 4 minutes. Uh, Under some subterfuge, or just walk up and say, I've heard a lot about you, and shake their hand. I'm pretty good at chatting. Um, Soon we will be at least acquaintances, if not friends, and that will lead me to 5 other people. I've told you the story before, but a friend of mine called one time and asked if I had Ross Perot's phone number. He wanted to talk to Ross Perot about something, and he was a serious guy. This person who asked me, it wasn't like I was sending a flake to Ross Perot. And I said, no, but with my magic Rolodex, I know someone who does. I'd met Ross at meetings or so, but I doubt he remembered it. And minus this story, I probably wouldn't remember it either. So I called. We'll just, since he's still with us and may not want me ratting things out like this, his first name is Merle, and he was one of my early mentors, taught me a
I know
whole,
who Merle is. Okay, keep going.
yeah. I called him and I said, I've got a guy. He screamed, he's not a flake, who wants Ross Perot's phone number. And the guy said, Merle said, well, does he want the phone he keeps in his pocket, the one on his desk, the one his secretary answers, or the one his assistant answers? I said, whichever one will get him to Ross quickest. And he gave me that number. And I called my friend back and I said, you don't know where this came from. I'm not going to tell you where it really came from, but you don't even know that it came from me. But here's the number you want. And so on. So you meet fascinating people, and I link them together, and I write down the names, and I keep an old-fashioned Rolodex, and plus all the stuff that gathers on a computer. And slowly but surely, you have more mentors than you know what to do with. Some of my best mentors, I don't do what they did or what they said to do. I use them as a warning of what not to do. I've learned
R
just as much from
I was
learn
gonna
just as much from people. Yeah.
right, right.
Well, Charlie
Was there
Manson would be a good example of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll never forget what you told me the only book he had in his cell, but I wanted to ask you, because you've had so many mentors and so many lessons that maybe I'm sure there were some that just didn't take at the time. So was there ever a lesson or lessons from a mentor that just didn't make sense but later turned out to be exactly what you needed.
Yeah, lots of them. Um, one that pops my mind while you were asking the question is Bill Patrick once said to me, I was busy. I'm sort of a minister at heart. I took the Cooter preference test years ago. Probably, I don't know why I did, to find out if it worked so we could use it as a qualifier in Holiday Magic as a recruiting tool. So I took it. Weeks later, the answer came back and it said that I should be a minister or a social worker. And I happened to be talking to my mother within a few hours of getting the results back. And I said, Mom, the Cooter preference test said I should be a minister or a social worker. And I laughed, and she didn't laugh. I heard silence. This was on the phone. And I said, don't you get it? She said, well, I get it. And that's what you've done. You've just figured out a way to get paid doing it. And it dawned on me, oh, that's what it was. So anyway, I'm busy trying to save. I had the habit, still do to a degree, of pulling somebody up out of the gutter, hosing them off, and turning them into a better version of themselves. Bill Patrick saw me doing that. And to somebody, probably saw me doing it lots of time, but he saw me doing it in a specific instance. He said, Benjamin, I need to talk to you. And I said, fine. That was never a good sign. But I said, okay. And he said, I probably didn't explain your job to you properly. I didn't hire you to go save the down and out and give salvation to the needy. I hired you to find people who are already doing what we want done and get them to come over here and do it for us. Because, quote, people are going to do what they've always done, which in too many cases is nothing.
Oh,
So the Cooter preference test took a couple hours to take and weeks to get back, but that was the answer. People are going to do what they've always done. I've always been sort of a minister type person. Even when I was a young hellraiser, I was helping people as best I could because that's what mother and dad raised me to do. And then I, by accident, got into a circle of people. Holiday Magic is a good example of that. In the early days, it was what I call the Wild West of multi-level marketing. Now they call it network marketing, so you won't know it's multi-level marketing. Uh, but when I got into it, it was sort of the Wild West. It had not yet settled down and drawing in respectable people. Almost everyone, and no offense to the company I'm about to name, but they know what I'm talking about. Almost everybody in a position making money in Atlanta in Holiday Magic when I joined had been or still was an Arthur Murray dance instructor.
oh,
Which,
that's not who I expected. I
yeah,
was
well,
expecting a vitamin company or something.
you know, Arthur Murray, uh, and again, I apologize to him. I'm sure there's many fine people at Arthur Murray. I don't even know if they're still in business or not. But Gigi, I were in a restaurant one time, and some guy struck up the music, and like 10 couples were on the floor, and down to the smallest head movement, head movement, hand movement, foot movement, they all did the same dance. I thought they were people who didn't even know each other. And I turned and I said, we've fallen into a nest of Arthur Murray instructors because they, it was the way they all danced the same. But what they were famous for or infamous for back in those days was slick men and women selling older widows and widowers lifetime dance lessons, sometimes 5 or 6 lifetime dance lessons.
How do you
If
do
they're
that?
well, you just write them up and take their money.
Oh my
My
God.
my point being, they were effective salespeople mechanically, but there was a tremendous lack of ethics involved. And I probably at some point either would have fallen in with that type of thinking or would have left. But what happened was we started getting some of the Merles and who I mentioned earlier, classier people in and sort of thinned out the herd. So I learned a lot from people in the very beginning. Much of it was what not to do. And some of it was sales techniques that were effective if you were honest. A gun can
Right.
be a tremendous asset to you, or you can go out and shoot up a Catholic school. So
Right.
the it's how you use it and what you do with it. So I had lots of early mentors, many of them things taught me things not to do. And then many, as the herd thinned out and we got down to quality people, taught me what to do. And then I was in heaven. People say, I probably told you this, but it's true. And that's funny to me. People said, "You knew Ogmandino? How did you meet Ogmandino?" I said, "Well, I was going down the hallway to the bathroom, and so was he. And we introduced ourselves." "How did he get in your house?" "He wasn't in my house. He was in my office about to see me applying for a speaking position." So some of it was, I do believe, people say it's not luck, it's hard work and set your goals and so on. That's true. But there's also some luck involved. Or God, as you call them, God winks.
God winks. Yep. We
Yeah,
were talking about that in the green room.
I picked up the Atlanta Constitution, which used to be the morning paper in Atlanta. The Atlanta Journal was the afternoon paper. Almost absent-mindedly waiting for Jimmy Rucker to come around and pick me up. We'd call it on a grocery store. But I was looking for something else where we could make some money, picked up the thing, threw everything but the one ads in the trash, uh, started thumbing through it. Typist, I didn't know how to type. Psychiatrist, I wasn't going to be a philosopher. I wasn't sure how to pronounce it or what it was. So there was nothing other than some, ring up groceries in a grocery store ad. There was nothing in that paper I could do that we were qualified to do. So I started to throw it in the trash. And as I did, I saw business opportunities beneath, either right beneath or in front of sales positions or help wanted or whatever it was. I thought business opportunities. I wonder what that is. So I looked at it, and one of the first ads my eyes landed on it said, "If you know anything about marketing plans and want to make more money, dial this number." So there was a payphone stand. I could have touched the payphone from where I was standing when I was reading the paper. So I went in the payphone, put my dime in, and dialed the number, and rather quickly was speaking to Bill Dempsey. And it was a Holiday Magic ad. I wasn't looking for Holiday Magic. 5 minutes before, I wasn't looking specifically for a job. I knew I needed to make more money, etc. To me, that's either a God wink or luck or what have you. But I've frequently told people the phone booth was a rocket ship that I didn't recognize. I pulled the door shut, dialed in the number, and the rocket took off. And nothing since that moment has been the same, including this conversation and the things you and I do together. It all started outside of a Colonial grocery store in Atlanta, Georgia. Oh, a cute thing, because I was named Ben Gay and Brown Gay at the time. The name changed later, but Brown Gay was the name of my father's company and his partner. I threw that on Dempsey on the phone several times. "Well, I'm with Brown Gay. My name is Ben Gay." Skipping over the part where that was my father, not me, and blah, 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 and so on. And he said, "Mr. Gay, stop." I said, "Yes." And he said, "I'm not the man standing in a phone booth. If you've ever had anybody call you from a phone booth, it's an unmistakable sound. Sounds like you're standing in a large garbage can."
I bet.
He said, "I'm
As
not
if
the
the
man.
door is closed.
I'm not the man standing in a phone booth answering one ads. Where are you?" And I told him. He said, "Oh, you're only about 2 blocks from my office, 1447 West Peachtree Street, Suite 300. Be standing in front of my desk in 10 minutes or never call this number again." He slammed down the phone back in the days when you could slam down a phone.
Yeah, I
And
miss those days. I
yeah,
do.
10 minutes later, I was standing in front of his secretary's desk. I said, "Hi, I'm Ben Gay." Lady said, "We've been expecting you." And from behind me, heavy Southern accent, "Ben Gay." And I turned around. I'm used to Ben Gay jokes. I said, "Yeah, I'm Ben Gay. What's your name?" He said, "I'm Zig Ziglar." He was sitting in the waiting room, waiting to go into the same meeting I was going into. And I said to him, with a name like Zig Ziglar, "You're making fun of Ben Gay? What's wrong with you?" But we became good buddies. He was 18 years older, but Zig hadn't had a big hit yet. He was still answering want ads, looking for the magic, and he found it the same day I found it.
And this is a whole nother topic. We'll talk about it at another time. But there was a contest, and I'll just briefly allude to it. There was a contest that I guess the whole company was part of it, but you and Zig Ziglar were neck and neck. And because you did one last push, not even trying to win the contest, you just could and you did, and you took that last push, put you over. You won the presidency and he won a Rolls Royce, and you kept trying to give him the presidency and he didn't want it. He wanted to keep his Rolls Royce. He saw what you went through.
He was older and wiser.
Yeah, I was trying not to say that, but yeah.
Yeah, I used to say to Zig on a bad day if I happened to be talking to him, "Zig, here's the deal." Of course, he'd heard this before. "I'll give you the keys to the front door. You give me the keys to the Rolls Royce, and we're even." He says, "Oh no, you won fair and square." But the victory was a year-long contest, which is stupid, but it was a year-long contest. The first prize was a mystery prize, and the mystery, obviously I didn't know what it was, but at the end of the year, I knew we were near the top, but I've just never been driven by contests. My father was anti-contest, and his attitude being, I come early, I stay late. I make every sale I can conceivably make. Don't try and bribe me with a television set. And there's a story that goes with that. I'll skip for now, but he literally told them where they could put their television set, and it had something to do with where the sun doesn't shine. Uh, so they sent him the television set before the contest even started. They said, "Here, you win." And but I won because, as it turned out, I say I won. Jimmy Rucker and I won, beating Zig Ziglar and Mel Lanius, his business partner. Uh, and we got down to the last day, and I didn't know all this. I frankly had almost forgotten about it. I figured we'll win something. And we get down to the last day of the contest, and Rucker and I had an opportunity to hold an opportunity meeting and pack some people into it. So we did. Meanwhile, in South Carolina, Zig was having his victory party. When I got to the home office, became president of the company, I went back and had him pull the files. The difference between me winning the presidency of the company, that was the mystery prize, and the Rolls Royce was about almost exactly the sales volume we did that last night while Zig was celebrating prematurely his victory. There's one of those mentor type lessons. It ain't over till it's over. Arnold
Till the
Palmer
fat
used
lady
to,
sings, yeah.
yeah, Arnold Palmer used to talk about being up. I don't remember the tournament or how far up he was, but 2 or 3 strokes, and he was Arnold Palmer, and he's on the seventh, coming down the 17th green, and a friend of his says, "Arnie, congratulations," and Arnold went over and took congratulations for winning the tournament, although he was a hole and a half away from that being true. And the people behind the ropes in that spot were all applauding, and he was bowing. And then he went down and holed out on the 17th, and then on the 18th, losing the tournament by a stroke.
Ow.
And he said, I learned then that you take your bows after you win, not
Hmm.
while. Gigi still does it. It almost always comes true anyway. But Gigi will say, that thing I posted this morning, I sold it. And I said, great. How much you get? And she said, well, it will be so and so, but they haven't paid yet. Apparently, there's a little delay with eBay and when you order and when you pay or something. I don't know. Or you're given a few days. And I've given up correcting her. But when we were first in the jewelry business together, I used to say, you don't count it till it's in the bank. In her case, it hardly ever happens. I don't think of all the thousands of orders she's taken. I don't think two people have ordered and never paid. Some do it a little long, but I still have that urge of, no, don't take your bow yet.
All right,
Zig
hang
took
on.
his, yeah, Zig took his bow and lost the presidency of the company. Arnold took his bow and lost a golf tournament. So
Yeah,
be
but with you and
careful.
Zig, it worked out exactly as it needed to.
Probably so. I don't think Zig would have done well. I didn't have any training in man. I was 25 years old and adjusted for inflation rather quickly. We got it up to a $3.5 billion a year company in 20 countries. I was a high school graduate who couldn't balance a checkbook, but I could speak and I could get people to do their jobs effectively. Here's one that sort of ties
Unless
together,
it was lipstick, though.
unless it was cherry red
Cherry red.
lipstick or gold caps. One day, I'm sitting in the office. Dr. Napoleon Hill is now on board. He's my official mentor, or whatever we called it in those days, making a good deal of money, being my friend. And I used to kill a kid, Bill Patrick. I said, what you did was you hired a grandfather for me. And he said, whatever works. So one day, I'm sitting in the office, and somebody with him, he was sitting at my conference table, and somebody, one of the vice presidents in charge of something, came in whining about something. It was their version of cherry red lipstick. And when they left, I forget it was a male, female, or who they were, but when they left, I turned to Dr. Hill and I said, do you see what I go through all the time? In a few minutes, somebody else will come in and complain about him or her. And then somebody else will come in and complain about the two of them. And he said, have you ever had him up to the house? Because when he was in town, he stayed at the house. Have you ever had him up to the house? I said, well, a couple of them are social friends, but the group, the 12 unofficial member of the USA board of directors, no. He said, have him up to the house. Let's turn them into friends.
Mm.
And the next day, after, it was probably a day or two to put it together, but the next day after the party, Hill was still in town, and so we had a board meeting, and they all came in and sat down. And this person's helping this person, and the lawyer, instead of Dorothy von Gerling, instead of trying to stop people from doing things, was showing them how it could be done legally without problems. And Bill Brogan, the grumpy old person's age, he said, no, I can't do that. But I'll tell you what I can do. And all of a sudden, thanks to Dr. Hill, I was benefiting from a mastermind group.
I wrote that down just as you said it, a mastermind.
Yeah, we had formed a mastermind, all pulling together. Picture one of those boats, in college or wherever, where they all row the scull or the boat. I don't know what the term is, but they all move in perfect unison. And there's one guy in the front yelling through a cardboard cone, keeping, I guess he's saying stroke, stroke or something. We went from 12 people in a boat who didn't like each other to 12 people pulling together as friends, social friends, business friends. And I no longer dreaded bumping into one of them in the hallway or having them all in my office. And that was Dr. Hill with that. Well, and he I thanked him for it one day. He said, you ought to read the book.
Yeah,
And I said,
I
"What
wrote a
book?"
book about that. Yeah.
Well, I'd read it at least once and maybe more,
Right.
but then became one of those things to this day I read once a year, cover
Think
to
and Grow
cover.
Rich. Yeah.
Yeah. But that
Listen,
was his
I've
point.
been
It's all in the book.
it's in the book. And you and I have both heard this a lot. I don't get it. I've read the book. I don't get it. What is it all about? Take action. That's all you need to
Mm-hmm.
know. Take action. And
Clear
I
cut,
do. I'm telling you, I
specific
do.
goals and take
Yep.
action. Yep.
When I come up with something, I did it this morning because I've been listening to it's a different book and now I can't remember the name of it. I'm not all that familiar with it just yet, but it was written, I believe, after Think and Grow Rich. And I was listening to it in my sleep. I don't sleep a whole lot anyway, and I'm a lucid dreamer, so I'm very busy when I'm sleeping. I'm listening, I'm writing stuff down. And all of a sudden I woke up, I went, huh. And I'm telling you, this morning, from 5 o'clock in the morning until now, when I'm chatting with you, I've had an incredibly productive day.
There you go.
I know. Just take
And
action, darn it.
you would teach somebody that instinctively if the subject came up. One of the tricks in the business you and I are in, personal development, among other things, one of the tricks is doing those things we teach.
Right, right.
I know how to make. Dr. Hill taught me my daily success system. I know how to write it in the book. I've got 3, 6, 7, 8, 8 things to go today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 have been done. And you're one of those numbers, being on this call with you. But having the discipline to do it, writing it down is step one. Learning the daily success system is step two. And then three, have the discipline to do it. As you and I were talking in the green room, I think that's where it was. Um, I can find everything on the list gets done every day, but I look at them. I don't do it the way Earl Nightingale did, now number them in their order of importance. There's a degree of common sense involved, but I tend to look at the list and do the one that's still left that I want to do or prevents me from doing. If I do it, it prevents me from doing something I really don't want to do.
Right.
And so that's where the discipline, take action, and discipline comes in. And you
And
would ask,
focus. Don't
and
forget focus.
focus.
You have to absolutely, and I have to have chats with myself. It's like, Denise, focus. And if that doesn't work, you're going to think I'm a lunatic, but I'm like a jack in the box. I will pop up out of my chair. I will go stick my head in the refrigerator. No joke. I open up the double doors. I stick as much of my torso and my head in that cold air. And I just stop. Whatever it is, it's got me going, I got you, and I start whining to myself. It makes me stop and recalibrate. And then I can come back in here, sit my butt down in my comfy chair and focus.
Ladies and gentlemen who are listening, you're listening to a woman who lives in the South.
Oh, yeah. You
Hot,
can't tell.
muggy. Now, I'm
Miserable.
nodding, going, yeah, I think I'll stick my head in the refrigerator. I'm thinking, no, a casual listener or somebody who lives in New Jersey may not understand that theory, but it makes
And
sense to me.
it does. And tomorrow, you commented on an article that I wrote yesterday. Tomorrow is the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. And
Oh,
then 3 weeks after that is the 20th anniversary of, Hurricane Rita. And I lived between both of them. I got clobbered by both of them.
mm.
So you're right, it's hot. We have 2 seasons here in the deep South, hot and hotter than hell. That's all we've got. That's it. And that's 11 months out of the year.
I think I told you this in the last week or two, so I'll cut it short. But I was visiting my sister when she still lived in Atlanta, and she and her next door neighbors over the property line were yelling back and forth. All right, see you in September or whatever. And when they went inside and shut the door and the conversation was over, I said, "Where are they going?" I thought they were leaving for Paris or something. And she said, they just went. I went inside. And she said, "We won't see them again until September."
Right.
This was late July or something. But they were waving goodbye like they were going to Mars.
Well, yeah. I mean, once, if you have to live in this kind of a heat and this humidity, it'll kill you. I don't care what anybody says. You will suffocate to death. It's hard. It's really hard on you. But yeah, and people say, "Oh, you get used to it." No, no, you don't. You're miserable. It is what it is. But I will say that Southern women very rarely wrinkle. We don't dry out.
Yeah,
So we
it's
we just don't get
good,
wrinkled.
good for good for moisturizing the skin,
Yeah,
if nothing else.
that's exactly right. But to get back to what we were talking about, I don't know how we always do. Well, I know how we do it. We just start chatting about any old thing. Was there any mentor ever that gave you advice that just went absolutely against the grain of traditional training, and then you had to say, "Well, that worked," later, not at the time?
Yeah, I talk about him frequently, and I wrote a book for him, or actually for his family. He died, but Sales Closing Power by J. Douglas Edwards and Ben
Right.
Gay. I didn't like J. Douglas Edwards. I thought he was a jackass, egotistical maniac, uh, rude if he wasn't on stage trying to sell something. But I can't tell you how many times after I remove him from my mind and go back to the message that I learned so many things from him that I use to this day and teach. One is if you have a built-in objection, bring it up first and brag about it.
Right.
Don't sit there waiting for the other shoe to drop. When you ask a closing question, shut up. Somebody who learned this stuff, his stuff, even better than I did was Jimmy Rucker. Rucker swears, he says, "If it weren't for J. Douglas Edwards, I wouldn't have been successful in selling." Well, that's nonsense. He was successful in selling, starting to be, before we ever heard of J. Douglas Edwards. And he's a better salesperson than Doug Edwards or me ever was or will be. But he picked up stuff from him that was really important to him. And once I got Doug Edwards out of my mind and just the words that he said, so many of the things he said are still true and applicable today. The I'm so grateful that I bumped into him, even though I personally wasn't terribly fond of him. But I did admire what he did for audiences. Whether he ever did it or not, I have lots of questions. But he could make an audience believe this was the way to do it. And when they did it, they had results like Rucker had. It turned their sales lives around. So he would be a good example of someone that I wasn't terribly fond of, didn't like his style, I can't think of anything really that I liked about Doug Edwards, except the hardcore lessons he taught us.
If you cared enough to write a book, that says something. It wasn't the man, it was the lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. And after all these years, and I'd never hear Doug Edwards' name spoken casually, along with mine or Tom Hopkins or Tony Robbins or the more current people. But things that we're saying now and sometimes get credit for, Doug Edwards was saying 50 years ago and before. He uh, he nailed down the mechanics of selling.
Oh, yeah,
Somebody
okay.
was somebody was talking the other day about somebody famous. It was a comedian, not terribly important. Oh, somebody was talking fondly about Johnny Carson and somebody else, and they said Johnny Carson was a mechanic. He knew what
Really?
to say, when to say, why it worked, and so on. He was just putting puzzle pieces together of a puzzle he knew very well. And then whoever else he was talking about, he said he was a free-flowing uh, comedian. You didn't know what was going to come out of his mouth. You know, when Johnny Carson was on, a lot of people, I think he's been gone 30 years, but if you want to see a master at work, Google Johnny Carson and watch him at do some of his Tonight shows. And if you watch enough of them, you'll get where, look up, here comes the stare into the camera, because he did certain things at certain times and he worked with certain people different ways. Rodney Dangerfield was one of his favorite guests, and all he did was throw him softballs, and react to it. Oh, really? Is that what happened? Tell me about this. Tell me about that. Tell me about this. And if he didn't like you and you were dying on the couch while he was interviewing, he'd let you die.
Yeah.
And he had a slave camera on his face, head and shoulders, at all times. So no director had to say, get a shot of that. Johnny looked up at the slave camera, and it better be on all
Mm.
the time, so he could get his licks in. So speaking, training, etc., are all predictable, doable, trainable, learnable things.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you, and I'm still on mentoring, by the way. It What's one life rule or a mindset that a mentor instilled in you that you have never broken?
That I've never broken.
Okay, almost never.
Not recently. Uh,
See, now you're gonna pick it apart. I thought it was a beautiful sentence, and I worked on it and everything.
I'll tell you, when I was taught, there's two lessons here, and I'll go over them quickly because we're running out of time. One, I was taught at Macy's, Davison's in Atlanta. The customer is always right. Well, when you're working with hundreds of salespeople and you can't stand over their shoulder every few minutes, that's probably a good way for not getting the store sued. However, the customer is not always right. Sometimes they're not even close to right. So that's lesson one. I was taught wrong. Lesson two is, since they're going to be wrong sometimes, how do you tell them gracefully? And we can cover this next week if you'd like. The way you tell them gracefully is you set the table first. Before the customer is wrong, you tell them uh, how you deal with people, including those who are wrong. Mr. Prospect, I was taught the customer's always right. That's not right. Sometimes the customer's wrong. So I promise you I'll tell you the truth so that you and I can get along fine. Fair enough? They'll say fair enough. And the
Right.
customer's always right is gone.
Yeah, these days, there's no such thing. It's just gotten awful, really, really awful. If somebody doesn't like the way their milkshake was, done, it's going to wind up on somebody else's head. That's not right. That's not how you do it. Yeah, let's definitely pick this up next week. And I have to ask you really quickly, if you could bring one of your mentors on this podcast today, what question would you ask them? I have to know. I have to know. You have to tell me.
It would probably be to Jimmy Rucker, and it would be, I know your standard answer to this, which was when I used to ask him to teach other people what he did. He would always say, just watch me and do what I do. Well,
Right.
Jimmy's not that stupid. He knew what he was doing. There was a rhythm to what he did and an order in which he did it and so on. So I would say, perhaps, did you deliberately refuse to teach people how to do what you do out of fear of competition, laziness? What was it?
Ooh. He's gonna call you. You're gonna you're gonna be in trouble. I'm telling and when he tells you, you have to tell me. So just
I will, but he'll never tell me because every time we get together, he's still whining about having to sell
his
his
car.
1957 Chevrolet. Yeah.
Well, tell him
He's
I'm with
never
him
gotten
on
over
that one.
that.
Well, I don't blame him at all. Okay, really quickly, looking back, what's the single most valuable piece of wisdom from a mentor that you still use today, every day?
My daily success system that
I knew
Dr.
it. I knew it.
helped me put together. It saved my life so many times and made just about everything I do possible. Someday we can do that over the phone, maybe give them a week or two's warning as to what they should get in front of them. There's a particular book or style of calendar,
A
and
daily
then I can
planner.
walk them through it. It's really simple, so simple that many people I've told about it nod, and I know they never going to do anything because they're thinking, well, that can't be it. It's got to be complicated.
It's not one of the very first. How long have we been doing this show now? 2 years, maybe? I've lost track.
Roughly, yeah.
A couple of years, but one of the very first conversations that you and I had, you taught me that system. And then, right after we hung up, I was on Amazon going, okay, which one? Oh, there it is. And I grabbed it and I've had one ever since.
And I have figured out in the last few weeks a much easier way to teach it,
Mm,
where I can explain it quickly to people, and then they fill in the blanks with things that are pertinent to what they're doing. But I'll show them how to set up the framework. And once you get the framework, you go, oh, I got that. And then you put the rest of your life into the system.
right. Well, next week, let's finish up this thing, the mentorship thing, and then we'll do that system.
All
So
right.
for the next couple of weeks, we'll have it. Well, listen, everybody, the best mentors leave us with lessons that never fade. Take what you heard today, put it to work, and pass it forward. And thank you for joining us on the Closers Inner Circle podcast brought to you by me, your partner in Success Radio. Ben, thank you. Oh, and
Thank you. You have a
happy Labor
what?
Day. Labor Day is
Oh, that's
coming.
right. When
Yay.
is this Labor Day of what you, is that a holiday of some sort?
Well, people get to take the day off. So, yes.
Not around here, they don't.
I'm not taking the day off. I have a podcast, but still, yeah, it is. Well, listen, go forth and I'll talk with you next week.
All right. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.